So when I made the last video, I had absolutely no idea that it was a controversial opinion. Everybody I'd ever spoken to about Berseria, people who loved it, people who hated it, and people who thought it was just okay. Every single one of them agreed when I talked about the skits. They all thought they were either too long or too frequent, and that they were used as cheap cutscene replacements. Little did I know that the skits in Berseria would essentially split Tales fans right down the middle. It's turned out to be one of the most contentious and hostile subjects I've ever talked about. Let's get a few things clear. I don't hate Berseria, I actually like it quite a lot. I'm not trolling, I don't hate the characters, I wasn't exaggerating, and yes, saying Berseria ruined skits is just my opinion. It's an opinion that half of you agree with, and half of you want to skin me alive over. I rewatched the video and read through some 500 or so comments and wanted to make this follow-up for two reasons. I think I can better express why I dislike the skits in Berseria, and I also know now why people do like the skits in Berseria. People took a lot of umbrage with me saying that Berseria ruined skits. I didn't pick the word ruined with any particular intent, and I didn't really give it any thought. I have been a fan of the Tales series for a damn long time. It's my favourite game series ever, and I am that Tales fan who does watch each and every skit. Well, I used to be that Tales fan. In Berseria, for the first time ever, I started skipping through skits, either ending them early or just spamming the next button after a few lines. That, to me, is a ruined skit system. A feature I have always loved was turned into one I truly dislike. Ruined sums that up pretty well for me. This isn't to say that every single aspect of the skits in Berseria is bad. There are actually quite a few ways Berseria's skits are well ahead. Berseria has easily the best looking skits in the series. They are animated brilliantly and they are far more dynamic in their visual presentation. They were voiced incredibly well, and the cast of characters in Berseria as a unit is also one of the strongest in the series. Skits in Berseria provide character progression and sometimes humour, but so do skits in all the other Tales games. A lot of people were saying this as if it was exclusive to Berseria, which had me kind of confused. There would still be character progression and humour if Berseria's skit system was different. What is pretty much exclusive to Berseria's skits though is the inclusion of main story progression to a not insignificant degree. This often made skits feel incredibly long and incredibly drawn out, which just isn't something many people are used to. Getting to the bottom of why skits in Berseria bothered me so much has quite a few layers,
like onions.
But at the core, it all comes down to the flow of the game. And yes, a lot of that has to do with just how long Berseria's skits are, but it also has to do a lot with the sheer number of skits there are and the frequency at which they are delivered to the player. A lot of you thought I was exaggerating how long the skits are in Berseria, and at the time I was basically just going off what I remembered. I remembered feeling like I was in skits for far longer in Berseria than I was in any other Tales game, and I later found out just how much longer that was. Viewing all the skits end to end in Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition would take you roughly 6 hours. This is one of the highest in the series. Exilia has around 2.7 hours worth of skits, and Exilia 2 has about 3.8 hours worth. One of the older titles, Tales of Eternia, has just over 2 hours of skits, and Tales of Symphonia has just under 4 hours of skits. Berseria's predecessor, Tales of Zestiria, had 5 hours of skits, so how long do you think it would take to view all of Berseria's skits end to end? Would you have guessed that you could watch all the skits from Exilia, Exilia 2 and Symphonia one after another in the same time it would take to watch all of Berseria's? Because, yeah, Berseria has just over 10 hours worth of skits. It's a significant increase over both the series average and the previous series high. Skits in Berseria are both longer and more frequent, but this on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. A portion of them do seem unnecessarily long, having 20 or 30 second unrelated setups before getting to the actual point of the skit, and some just seem to drag on without adding anything, but the real problem is long and frequent skits being delivered to the player seemingly without consideration for the flow of gameplay. In most Tales games, you'll come across a situation where something tense or suspenseful just happened, and you're pushed towards the next objective with some urgency, like someone's gone missing or a Blastia has been destroyed. On your way to investigate, a skit will no doubt pop up, but it reflects the current situation. The characters themselves are panicked and the skit is over in 30 to 40 seconds, so you can move on with this tense piece of gameplay. The same thing happens in Berseria, except skits aren't 20 to 30 seconds long in Berseria, they're over 2 minutes on average. It's like the game is sending you mixed signals. It wants you to rush to the next objective, but stops you halfway there to have a 2.5 minute conversation about whether or not it's Eisen's curse that's caused the problem, for the 14th time. In games with an overworld like Vesperia and Symphonia, you'll get a skit when you first head out, then you'll start travelling, have a battle or two, and then maybe another one will trigger. This respects the psychology of the player. When you first enter a zone you haven't really set off yet. You get a skit which begins the journey, and only after having made some progress are you given another one. Even if you get 3 skits on the overworld between towns, you have made steady progress the whole way. Berseria has field maps rather than an overworld, and very frequently you'll run into the scenario where there is a bridge you have to cross. Towards the beginning of the bridge, a skit will trigger. It's Berseria, so it'll be quite long, but that's okay, I might have enjoyed it. Now though, it's time to continue, but wait, no it isn't, because 7 seconds later, a little bit further along the bridge, another skit will trigger. It's such a short amount of time that I have made no real progress at all, but a long enough micro gap for my mind to have shifted back into gameplay mode expecting a battle or a puzzle or something like that. Then of course there are forced main story skits, which are literally cutscene replacements, followed by quite possibly 2 or 3 more skits that have already been queued up just for entering a town. It just doesn't seem like any thought was put into where skits trigger in Berseria. The spacing, and sometimes lack thereof, feels way off, and the flow of the game suffers because of it. It's why I described Berseria as stop-start in the last video. That's how it feels to me a lot of the time. Maybe the length of the skits didn't bother you. I felt that a lot of them could have delivered the same level of character progression or humour if they were cut down into smaller packages, but you might enjoy them when they're longer. We are all individuals. Our brains all work differently, so the spacing and frequency of the skits mightn't have made the flow of the game feel choppy to you, and perhaps the fact that they used 4 skits in place of cutscenes just wasn't an issue. If this is the case, I can 100% see why you liked or even loved the skits in Berseria. The presentation of them is undoubtedly the best in the series, and the stronger than average cast of characters compels you to delve deeper into their personalities, backstories, and relationships. These aspects are something I hope to see in the skit system of every future Tales, but unfortunately for me, these good aspects do not overcome the overwhelming feeling of tedium, frustration, and poor gameplay flow that I felt from the effects of the significantly longer and more frequent skits with less thought out spacing and placement. That is why, for me, Berseria ruined skits. Thankfully though, the ruination of the skit system didn't ruin the whole game. The story was incredibly enjoyable, the cast was brilliant, the battle system was fine, and overall, Berseria is a great entry in the Tales series that I like quite a bit, despite having one aspect I really rather dislike.
Thanks for the liking, subscribing, and the sharing!
And I'll see you all soon.